The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of WTJX, its board, staff, or underwriters.
On this episode of Comes with the Territory, a green light for cruise port expansion on St. Thomas and St. Croix. A groundbreaking for the Territory's first new hotel in more than 30 years. And a proposed public-private partnership to modernize and improve the Territory's 2 airports. We'll go one-on-one with the man who's helping to make it all happen, Port Authority Executive Director Carlton Dowe.
From the time the hurricane hit, none of these homes are touched yet.
Less than 30 homes have been completed through a federally funded program that was supposed to help hundreds of local homeowners rebuild after the 2017 hurricanes. What's causing the delay? We'll have more. Plus, the U.S. House of Representatives has a new speaker after 22 days of chaos. We'll tell you what that means for the Territory. Joining our panel discussion to analyze these and other political issues are Attorney Key Walker and former Senators Uzi Richards and Roosevelt David. Comes with the Territory starts now. Hello, thank you for joining us on Comes with the Territory. I'm Leslie Comisian. Officials have announced significant developments in recent weeks, all aimed at enhancing the Territory's primary industry. Let's delve into the details.
We're looking forward to the continued expansion of our tourism product.
The Board of Governors for the Virgin Islands Port Authority recently gave the green light for expanding the cruise ports in Frederiksted, St. Croix, and Crown Bay, St. Thomas. The main goal of these projects is to accommodate larger cruise ships and upgrade the port expansion of the Austin Bay Monsanto Marine Terminal. At a recent press event, Royal Caribbean Group and Cruise Terminals International joined the Port Authority in announcing a $250 million plan to transform Crown Bay into a world-class cruise destination while boosting the Territory's reputation as one of the best places to visit in the Caribbean. Local officials recently gathered for a groundbreaking ceremony for the Hampton by Hilton at Havenside, marking the first new hotel in the Territory in over 3 decades. This 5-story, 126-room hotel will include a nearby welcome center, green space, and a parking area. Haven Developments, in collaboration with Hilton, is spearheading this project, which was introduced to the GERS by Virgin Islands Port Authority Executive Director Carlton Dowe. The Hampton by Hilton is slated to open its doors in the first quarter of 2025.
In working with Hilton, they shared research showing what a major impact the hotel will have on the Havenside Mall. I'm excited to bring new visitors to the area and engage with all tenants. A special thanks to Executive Director Dowe. I sincerely appreciate his friendship and his guidance in navigating the various legislative and permitting requirements involved with this project.
And we are pleased to have with us the man behind all that you just saw, the Executive Director of the Virgin Islands Port Authority, Carlton Dowe. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Leslie.
Let's get down to it. A new hotel for the first time in 30 years in the Territory. That's a hell of a development. Tell me about how that all came about.
Well, Mr. Sean Miller had contacted me and told me during COVID, he have the big hangar down at the airport. He brings in a lot of private jets and passengers. And he was stuck because he had nowhere for his pilots or folks that come in to stay. And he walks up to me and tell me one day, hey, I want to build a hotel.
Wow.
So I was like, just like that? So he was like, yeah, I want to build a hotel. Do you have any land? I said, no. But over to Waiko, they have property and you should, check them out. So called me up on a Saturday.
Wow.
Says, what's going on? What are you doing? I said, well, I just home cooling out. I was like, meet me by Havenside.
Wow.
I said, okay, cool. And we drove around the Havenside area, and the first place where he really wanted to put the hotel originally was down by the area by the butterfly farm, back down in there. So he told me right away that he had the folks from Hilton coming into the territory. This within a 2-week period. He had made the connection and tell me, hey, I have the first right to develop a Hilton Hampton in the Virgin Islands.
That's impressive.
Right? And that was like very, quickly. And after that, he told me he had the guys coming from Hilton. I contacted Governor Albert Bryan just to let him know that this is happening. And they came in and went straight to Government House and did a presentation for the governor. Midway through this presentation, the governor said, stop right here. I want this to happen. So at that point, I said, well, you want it to happen? You're going to have to try to figure out the pieces, the people you want engaged with Sean Miller, because I know it's going to be a lot of, the permitting process, like he mentioned, the back and forth. So he says, I said, it's not on port property, I've been frank.
Yeah.
It's not on port property.
Sure.
You're going to have to get folks who you want to navigate it. He says, I found the person to navigate it, and that's you.
Wow.
So with that, I went to work, and Sean Miller and I have an excellent relationship, and we continue to, press the project. Interestingly, we set up a meeting, and the folks from Waiko was not present to the meeting, but GRS came to the meeting. And that was the switch from Waiko to GRS, and he went forward. Mr. Nibs came to me and Ms. Clendenin and said, hey, they have property up there too. They pretty much would want to do something to diversify their income and their portfolio. I said, it's great. So we went to work, and right away, GRS board, they authorized it, they approved it. And I thought I was done with it then, but Mr. Miller continued to call me for the permitting, DPNR, and just navigating the process.
Sure.
The fire department, everything. So he's a good friend, and he's done business with us. And I know he's going to do exactly what he said he would.
He's going to do. Let's talk about some of the opposition in the community. A few people were very vocal about the location, about obstructing views. Let's dispel some of the rumors that have been out there about this property. The fact that it's not a good location. I think it's actually a prime location. But let's talk about why Havenside, other than availability of land.
Well, one of the big things we must understand is that he's going to set this up as not a resort. This is a business type hotel.
Sure.
Where people are doing business transactions could come into. All those restaurants in the area that is walking distance. He's not putting a restaurant per se in the building so that people could be accommodated in the vicinity. By the time you get to that 5-story and you go up, you're not going to really be obstructing anyone. But what we have to be mindful of in this community is that our basic product, we could shape it however we want, is that of tourism.
Yes.
And I tell people all the time, although Florida have arranged tangerine and grapefruit, that's not what they're known for. It's the tourism is what drives this place. Yes.
Yeah.
So, I think that I look at the legislature, and they had, of the 15 senators, 14 of them supported it. So at the end of the day, we had real good support. And I think as one of the things in our community, people don't believe that people do what they say they're going to do.
That is true.
And that's a big, so when people saw that, hey, this man is serious, he done start to drive all these piles. By the end of January, the first floor slab should be here in the territory and ready to be laid down. So he told us that he expects to do this in 2 years. Sean Miller will do that.
Excellent. Another big partnership, Royal Caribbean. You just signed an agreement with them for the cruise port expansion. Tell us about economically how that's going to impact our tourism product.
Well, what we have to look at too, the guests that we hope to attract is also the overnight visitor. Your cruise passenger today becomes later on your overnight guest. But more than that, when we bring millions of people to the territory, these people are eating, they're drinking, the taxi drivers, and we don't appreciate the fact that a lot of these people are small businesses that benefit the water tour operators, the dive shops, and we could go on and on. And so we were able to forge the relationship with Royal Caribbean that grew over several years. And we still have some more work to do. The last, when they were here just recently, what we did really was agree to a new pairs usage agreement. Because and all that simply means is that we have an agreement that we signed with them, and we're extending the agreement. They had a 10-year agreement. We're extending that a little further. and with that came the fees that they have to pay us. And if all of us know that when you're talking about the cruise industry, they don't want to pay 10 cents more.
No, they don't.
But in dealing with Royal Caribbean, a partnership that we have forged, they have agreed with us that they're going to start to charge additional, come January, not years down the road, come this January, they're going to start to charge additional $5 that has nothing to do with the current tariff they're paying us.
And how does that $5 end up in our coffers, or what portion of it do we get?
Well, that $5 is for the pre-development of the entire Crown Bay and some work in Frederickstead. That the pre-development is millions of dollars, mind you. One of the things come quickly to mind is the mechanics and all these folks down in the area. I was down there today. It's disgusting. No Virgin Islander should like how it looks. And we're going to do something about it. So several years ago, the Port Authority, we purchased some 3+ acres. And we expect to relocate the mechanics and other small businesses over there because we don't want to put them just out on the street.
Sure.
But the money to do that upfront money to do that is coming from Royal Caribbean and their partner, which is a company called CTI. CTI is a company called Cruise Terminal International. They are the development arm now for a lot of Royal Caribbean is doing. When COVID hit and all the cruise lines had financial challenges,
Absolutely.
CTI became a partner, extending all kind of capital to them and capital to develop other ports over the world in the world. Interestingly, and we can't underscore that we in the Virgin Islands, the major development that CTI is doing, we are ahead of any other place that they are doing a development. They're doing one right now in Italy as we speak, but we further ahead. There's none in the Caribbean that they're doing right now. We are the first that our port that they would be doing this big project with. We're talking about over $250 million of investment. Means construction, expanding our dock. We expect to build a third pier down in that area. It'll go up on the hillside. And so it's a lot that we're doing with Royal Caribbean. Probably by the first week of December, we expect to be visiting them again, the board, our governing body, myself, and some other staff, so that we could finalize some other arrangements that we're doing. But this has been moving relatively quick. And the good thing is, as partners, and like I always say, partnership and in a cruise line, they can't be fair weather friends.
Yeah.
When the chips are down, they have to be there for us as well. And what we said to them, you want the development, some of this money, this $5 is also going to dredging of Crown Bay, because dredging will be necessary, and dredging in Frederickstead, because right now the vessel that they carry into Frederickstead is slightly under 3,000 passengers. They want to take the Freedom class, which is like 3,500, just under 4,000 passengers. They expect to do that. They expect to do that.
You mentioned earlier people doing what they say, and the community not believing people when they say that. The airport expansions, both at Henry Wilson, at Cyril E. King. What's the status of those projects, and how long can the community expect for the construction to continue?
I like to begin this by saying the rest of the world and the Caribbean isn't sitting by waiting for the U.S. Virgin Islands. We've got to get engaged. And that project is a public-private partnership. And the part I like to underscore, it's not a privatization. Privatization is when you change the asset becomes ownership by the private entity. In this case, the ownership, everything remains with the Port Authority and by virtue with the government of the Virgin Islands. That's one. But we went out quite some time and looking for people who would want to develop this airport. We went out and we had a big forum here in St. Thomas and St. Croix. Folks came in. We had 9 people. We have now narrowed that down to 4.
And that's the Relief King you're talking
Correct.
about? Okay.
Both airports.
Both Rolson and, King.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because
Yes.
one of the things we made abundantly clear to the folks that we're speaking to, this is a package deal. Like Miss Sandy used to say, you can't buy banana.
That's my aunt, so I know what you're talking
you
about.
can't buy banana and leave me Tanya on the side. You got to buy banana and go with at least one Tanya.
Yeah.
So it's a package deal. And so we said that whoever is coming, they must be prepared to rebuild both airports and start construction at the same time. So we're not talking about some fly-by-night company who don't have capacity. In order to do such a large project, they must have good financial capacity and backing. We've narrowed that down now to 4, and we expect by late February, the first week of March, to select that partner that we want to go forward with. And again, I just want to make it clear, we've been in constant communication over 2 years now with the administration. Governor Albert Bryan's been at board, our governing body. These are things that our governing body is actively involved in. And so we have been going through this process for quite some time now. Up to next week, I have staff that will be leaving again to do some meetings out at the territory. So it's active.
Yeah, there was a request for additional funding for the completion of the parking area at Cyril E. King. What's the timeline the community can expect that project will be finished?
The parking garage?
Yeah.
What we call the transportation center. We expect that no later than January, we should open 50% of it. Depends on supplies and all these things that come in. The canopy have to be built. But we believe by January, that's the outside date. For me, it's down now. I don't have a lot of patience with stuff like that. But as you can, if you go down there, anybody traversing that area would see the progress that we have made in that facility. So we want to do 50% by sometime January. And then by Carnival, we'd like to do the entire parking facility. That facility would be able to hold over 565 cars.
That's good news. We know that there have been some FAA fines that have taken place actually over the last 5 to 6 years. They've been more than that, actually, going back a few years now. Why are we finding ourselves in a situation where we're being fined for airport, runway maintenance, those kinds of things? What's making that happen?
I'm glad you mentioned that, but let me just say that this week, we had an informal meeting with the attorneys and the legal people from FA, for the record, this week, Monday. We did that. We continue to talk to them. We have to provide certain information for them. One of the major problems we have in the territory, unlike most states and even go to Puerto Rico, when they have to maintain their runway, they can close down an entire section of that runway and just close it down for months and work. We are unique in of ourselves because we could only close down a very small piece of it to try to keep the traffic open. And as we're speaking to you tonight, all into the morning, we have people at the airport working when people are sleeping. So that poses challenges for us. Some of the things like in our discussions with them, we have, after the meeting Monday, we have to present them with certain documentation. For example, if you go to the airport now, you'd see a whole big project taking place, a whole new area that we are pouring concrete, thousands of yards of concrete. Well, that's normally the area that the planes would line up to depart. One of the things that we're finding us for is, hey, it has to be striped, it has to be marked. But then you reflect, how could it be striped and marked when in fact there's concrete being poured there right now? And the marking that is used in the airport is not what you see in the street.
Yes, it's different.
So I want to make that clear. So there's a company called Highlight. We were able to present to FAA the contract showing them we already engaged Highlight, but it cannot come into mark us until that concrete portion is done. It's a lot of small things, but over time they accumulate. But here's the irony of this. For me, I always look at the brighter side. There are things that we have to own, and I'll be the first to say that. The challenges, that's why we get paid, to deal with the challenges. But here's the thing. While all of that is going on, the FAA make available to the Port Authority $28 million to do runway work that we're doing currently. So while they give us $28 million to do all sort of work, and other issue that we run into from time to time with the FAA is this inspector that came recently, he was just on the job in this district like 2 years.
You mentioned Puerto Rico. There's been word that a new airline in the territory, a lot of people are excited about the commuter airline Fly the Whale possibly moving to Puerto Rico. True or not?
We've been talking to them, not moving to Puerto Rico, but starting to do flights from the territory. They're not moving to Puerto Rico.
Good.
There will be, if all goes well in short order, they might be having some service to and from the Virgin Islands to Puerto Rico, which means it extends people capacity to travel around wherever they might want to go. But that was no easy task. It was our governing body, our staff reaching out, going back and forth. We knew for many years, most of us in the business knew Omar. I wouldn't call his last name. But anyway, we knew Omar pretty good. So we started dialogue with him. They were doing some charters and flights down to the Bahamas. We were able to talk to him. and give them a arrangement, give them some arrangement that they would come. One of the things we're able to do is any new airline is not fly the whale alone, but any new airline that coming into the territory with a new route, we are prepared to give them landing fees discount, 50% on operational fees.
This is just commuter or
anyone,
any airline? Okay,
anyone.
got it.
But it has to be a new route, or additional route, or a new service altogether.
Okay.
And I believe there should be some other good things happening before the end of the year, I believe.
Excellent. At the beginning of the conversation, we started off with talking about the Hampton Inn and how you had to work with WICO, now GERS. Forever, there's been conversations about merging the two bodies. How do you feel like that? Still a possibility, still a good idea. What's your take on the merger of the Port Authority and Virgin Islands, WICO?
I was looking at the stuff going on with Israel and Hamas. And one
That's
of
a
the,
hell of a comparison.
yeah, but one of the generals said that's above my pay grade. That's above my pay grade. But as a senator, I support a merger.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the record is clear. When I was a senator, I was the one who sponsored the legislation. I couldn't get the support way back then. But I think it would be in the best interest of the territory. I still feel strongly that way. But it's how we put those pieces together. That's my view. But
What do you think has been the major obstacle to actually making it happen? Because you haven't been in the legislature for over 10 years now. So what has been holding us back?
I don't know. I think strong differences of opinion. That's what I will put it. Strong differences of opinion.
But if a governor, let's just say Governor Bryan, I know you're not speaking on his behalf, but if he were to make it happen, what are the actual steps? Help the community understand what we would need to do. Well, and from a logistical point of view, the consolidation of the operations, what do you think his approach should be?
Well, that's a tough one because we go through that battle all the time. But I believe that, first of all, the Port Authority is the Port Authority. WICO have a pair inside the port. For me, I'm not an egotist where it don't matter to me tomorrow who end up being that entity. Mm-hmm. But if it's the Port Authority, I suspect the way it should happen, in my eyes, is that that the cruise ship segment be division under the Port Authority. To me, that's the simplest way. And whether they could keep, it has nothing to do with Mr. Hartley, mind you,
of course,
or anybody. He could still be the person managing the industry,
sure,
if that's what they want, mm-hmm. But it ought to be folded in to the Port Authority. But I must also say that the other challenges that one wouldn't see or don't know is all of us have various debt.
Yes.
And that's a big
And I was going to ask you about the financial aspect of it.
All of
how does that all play out? Because both entities have the ability to do financing. You mentioned
correct.
Debt. And how would we save money as a territory by doing so?
Well, I think some of the things that we duplicate, but we stronger together. That was a slogan. But anyhow, we are in fact stronger.
You hinting at politics on me? Okay.
we are stronger together because one of the things that the cruise lines had successfully been able to do for a long time. During the DeYoung administration, we were fortunate that WICO and ourselves were able to get together and say, you know what? No more bidding in St. Thomas. In other words, you can't come down to Kwangme and say, well,
I'm going to give her
$10.
Yeah.
Then you go up to WICO and say, man, again, $10. Well, we're going to. So
yeah.
One of the good things in all of what has happened over the years with WICO and the port is that we have agreed to a common tariff. So any cruise line coming into the territory, they're paying the same fee whether they go up to WICO
sure.
or they come down to Krongby. But the $5 thing is something completely different. I just want to be clear.
Yes.
And that's just for the development part of it. But that was a strategic thing that happened. So when we go to have discussions with the cruise lines now, one of the things and I'd never forget when that happened. Leslie, when we went there, and it was the WICO folks and the Port Authority folks, we went to a meeting with the cruise lines together.
And made it happen.
And the president of Royal said at that time, wow, this is a new day in the Virgin Islands. They were shocked that both of us
came together.
appeared together.
Well, that's good
And that's
news.
what should happen, to be honest with you.
We've ran out of time. It was a pleasure having you on the show. The time goes quickly, I know. But great conversation. Thank you for joining us, Executive Director Carlton Dowe. Coming up, this week's Power Panel joins the conversation. But first, a rundown of other important news in the territory.
27 homes completed.
27 totally completed.
Correct.
So help us understand what are the challenges?
Complex policies and procedures and issues related to soliciting bids have been major roadblocks for the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority's Envision Tomorrow home repair program. During a recent Senate hearing, the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority's leadership told lawmakers that they were working hard to address the backlog of home repairs and touted their progress for the last year, including more than 400 homes now in various stages of the design to rehabilitation process. But Stephen Thibault of Synergy Construction pointed out that there was minimal communication from the VIHFA to contractors, and the agency's practices were not contractor-friendly, causing wasted time and resources. Several lawmakers stressed that the program's delays were hurting residents who need the help most.
I know a young lady is 80 years old, been living with her neighbor from the time the hurricane hit. And none of these homes are touched yet. These things drive me crazy listening to my constituent.
There's a lot of funding that's there, and we need to make sure we utilize the funding. It's our job to look out for our people.
There's only been 12.5% expended of the total funds since 2019. So that's a very, very slow moving wheel. And we really need to speed it up because there are people out there that really, really need help.
Ms. Barnes, Attorney, anything else to say?
A court date of December 8th has been set for Stephanie Barnes, nearly 2 years after she was convicted of conspiring with former Casino Control Commission Chairwoman Violet Ann Golden to steal money from programs receiving government funds. The scheme included Golden hiring Barnes as a certified problem gambling specialist, even though Barnes lacked the certification at the time. Commission funds were used to help Barnes acquire her certification, master's, and PhD. Evidence at her jury trial established that Barnes received salary and benefits from the Casino Commission totaling over $600,000 in 3 years. The duo also misused funds for spending sprees and lavish vacations, including a chartered flight with VIP passes to the St. Kitts Music Festival. In December of 2021, Barnes was convicted of 3 federal and local criminal charges, and she has been jailed in Puerto Rico since then. Her sentencing hearing has been repeatedly delayed due to conflicts she's had with multiple attorneys. At a court hearing last month, the judge ordered Barnes to represent herself. During the upcoming court hearing, the judge will consider Barnes' motion for acquittal and, if necessary, her sentencing.
The gentleman from the great state of Louisiana and the 56th Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, the Honorable Mike Johnson.
After a turbulent 3 weeks, the Republican-led House of Representatives elected Trump ally Mike Johnson as Speaker of the House on October 25th. The vote tally stood at 220 in favor and 209 against. Johnson is in his 4th House term, having represented Louisiana's 4th Congressional District since 2017. He is the first House Speaker from Louisiana and the most junior representative to assume the role since 1883. The House had been without a Speaker since October 3rd, when Kevin McCarthy was ousted after failing to get enough votes to retain his leadership position. In the vote, 8 Republicans and all Democrats supported the motion to remove McCarthy, the first time in House history members had voted to remove the Speaker. Republicans struggled to find a Speaker nominee who could secure a majority vote without relying on Democratic support. Some may remember Johnson for his viral exchange he had with VI Delegate to Congress Stacey Plaskett during a House Judiciary Subcommittee hearing in March.
Another thing we can examine because he's not here. Very good.
No, you can
Thank
examine
you.
it. It's a document. He's going to
No,
enter into the
examine
record.
him for what he wrote and the intent behind what he said.
Well, I would
But-
just
okay.
I would
Go
just
on.
point out that that's unanimous consents are for documents, and we got the document
Mr.
right here
Chairman,
that he handed to you.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask unanimous
The chair
consent.
now recognizes Ms.
Mr.
Wasserman
Chairman,
Schultz for her 5
I have a
minutes.
unanimous consent request, Mr. Chairman.
Pardon?
I have a unanimous.
With us now to dissect these hot topics are former Senate President Usi Richards and prominent local attorney Key Walker, owner of the Walker Legal Group. Both are joining us in St. Croix virtually from our studio there. And joining me on set is former Senator Roosevelt David, who served 5 terms undefeated in the Virgin Islands legislature. But before we get to that, we just had Liberty Day in St. Croix, celebrating D. Hamilton Jackson in Grove Place. And there was a bit of a protest there. We have some footage that we want to go to. So let's talk about what we saw with people confronting the lieutenant governor. And let's take a look at it, the exchange over the water crisis on St. Croix.
My thing is, y'all has paid for water for us. I live in West, okay? So how come WAPA can't pay for water for us? Please do for your people. That's what I'm asking. Step up and do for your people. Don't let him hold you back. You have a mouth of your own. Chucky gun, so you have no backbone. You understand? So find one of your own, please. There you go, sister.
Okay, so I think you're absolutely correct. Could we talk?
Yes.
I think you're absolutely correct. It's a very difficult place to be in with regard to power in the territory. If we correct these problems with WAPA, and I really have questions about the management, and I have questions about the spending. And when we have meetings, I raise those questions. I don't come out and speak like against the governor. That's not something that I'm supposed to do as a lieutenant governor. We have meetings, we have discussions about our various points of view with regard to what we should do to WAPA. And I think what we need to do is a subsidy across the board to underwrite the high cost of it to residents of the territory.
Then that was a very interesting exchange just now. And it's good to see democracy is alive and well in the Virgin Islands. But I understand, Senate President Richards, you were at the event in Grove Place on the 1st. Tell us a little bit about what you just saw and some of what you heard Lieutenant Governor say.
Well, good evening, Ms. Commission. Good evening to Senator Roosevelt St. C. David, and a pleasant good evening to the person that is joining me here, Attorney Key Walker from the island of St. Croix. Let me just quickly say, I think the most important point to take from the discussion is the ability and the willingness of citizens to express their concerns regarding things that in their minds, not only in their minds, but based on their experiences that are in fact going on within their community. I think more importantly, outside of what I've heard, I think the crux of the issue is how best do a group of citizens be able to motivate the implementers, the administrators, in being able to effect change on a situation that they're experiencing. And so that that was an appropriate forum to vocalize what's been experienced by the citizens, particularly here on the island of St. Croix. I think the next step that will concern me is on how best should they be able to mobilize themselves to actually get some action out of the things that they're vocalizing, and so that in regards to getting their message across, and that was not the only forum or medium that they've been able to look at and exercise the ability to speak on the issues that affect them. But more importantly, I think that there are some other mediums and forums that they will have to take to get some positive results in regards to the concerns and the suggestions that they are bringing about.
I want to go to Attorney Walker. What are you hearing on the island of St. Croix from residents in regards to their feelings? Obviously, emotions are running high. There's a lot of fear about, what's taking place with the water situation, and still some unknowns. There's, individuals that are wondering whether it's the entire island, whether it's just restricted to the 4 neighborhoods that have been mentioned thus far, and what are potential health issues for people in the future. First off, how do you grade how the administration has dealt with the issue? And to people's fears that they're having, what do you think residents can do to the senator's point about mobilizing to see something actually being done about this issue on St. Croix?
Well, I think, what's significant is that where the events were held this week is one of the affected areas. And because we live in a territory where we have challenges when it comes to healthcare, I think any situation that potentially threatens the health of the residents is taken very, very seriously. With that, I would say that the administration has really committed to fixing the issues at WAPA. I mean, I don't think we've really ever seen a governor support or even align himself so much with the utility that's constantly under attack, and to some extent even tying his reputation and legacy to that of the leadership of WAPA. With that said, I do think that education is important. I think there needs to be more of an outreach in the community to explain what the challenges are facing the water, what threat, if any, there is with the status of the water and what can be done to alleviate it. I do believe the administration has done a good job of putting that information out in its press briefings, in its press statements. But for some segments of our community, they actually want that audience front and center in their face, like the lieutenant governor was there this week. So I think we probably need more forums like that outreach to the communities that are most affected. And I think that will help improve, hopefully, the situation and the response and alleviate some of the fears that some members of our community have.
Roosevelt, you heard what the lieutenant governor said, and there were a couple of things I thought was very interesting. One, he said in meetings, he has questions about the leadership of WAPA. Hearing that from the lieutenant governor, I got to tell you, as a resident, that's not very reassuring. The second thing he said is, and I wouldn't lead anything into it, but he says, I don't publicly disagree with the governor. And I think any lieutenant governor or vice president, that was what they would say publicly. I have no issues with that. But hearing that from him, what do you pick up, being as politically seasoned as you are regarding this issue that's actually going on behind the scenes?
Well, I have to commend the lieutenant governor. He handled that issue very well indeed, because he could have gotten shaken as that lady made some very strong comments at him. And he took time to say, I agree with you. You are absolutely correct. And there are things that are happening that the commitment has been made is going to get fixed. And he talked about a subsidy, which is a very, very good point to help the people who are suffering during this period. But in addition to that, the governor has taken a position, state of emergency, which means he could take action much quicker than he normally would have. And so, with respect to the leadership, I myself have concerns about the leadership there. So I don't have a problem when Lieutenant Governor is going to say, yes, I have these discussions with the governor. And nonetheless, I'm going to support his initiatives. But the governor is committed, and I know that, and I said it here before, that WAPA is fixable, it's on its way to be fixed, and it's going to be fixed under this administration. So I do believe that the governor is committed, the administration is committed, and we're going to see a big change coming forward.
Let's go back to the island of St. Croix to Attorney Walker. We had in our roundup the issue, and this case is now, it's hard to believe it's been 2 years, but the sentencing and conviction of Ms. Barnes, and the fact that a judge has now said, listen, I'm tired of the shenanigans. You have to represent yourself. Let's talk a little bit about this and how the justice system is being, most people would say, manipulated in this case. And where does things stand right now with Ms. Barnes legally?
Well, honestly, I believe that Ms. Barnes is in a good position. One of the reasons for the last delay of her sentencing was an amendment to the U.S. sentencing guidelines, which more than likely will benefit her. The judge's decision to not appoint yet another attorney to represent her is an unusual one, but there's precedent for it, and there's precedent for it in the Third Circuit. I wouldn't say that she's been able to manipulate the system. I think she has tried. She's made attempts to manipulate the system. But honestly, I think the judge has exercised great judicial temperament with her. I think all of his positions, his opinions, his orders with regards to what we're referring to as her shenanigans have been balanced and thorough, even when she's attacked him personally. And I think the last decision that was made to say, listen, I can't appoint another counsel to you was made after he had warned her on several occasions that if you're not going to cooperate with your attorney, I can't keep appointing new counsel. I do believe this sentencing is going to move forward. I do believe the change to the sentencing guidelines is actually helpful to her. And hopefully we can see some closure to this case by the end of the year.
It's interesting getting a legal perspective, but Senator Richards, this issue is right in your backyard, having serving on the Casino Commission. The other defendant in the case has literally served her time, the former chair, and is out of prison at this point. Most people are saying, why are we still talking about this? Why can't we just get this over? What's your take on the issue?
Well, just for the record, I'm more than a year removed from being a member of the Casino Commission. I believe past April of this year would have made a year since I've left the commission. I want to concur with part of the statement that Attorney Walker shared with you. I think as a person that in her case was a defendant, I know that has been convicted of a particular charge, she's found a way to exercise to her greatest capacity her concern, not only in regards to the decision of being found guilty of a certain number of charges, but being able to put some pressure on the court system. And I would not call it a manipulation. I would call it an opportunity for her to find ways to continue to exert pressure in a case that was due to become, at this point, for her sentencing. I also believe that given the fact that it has been such a prolonged and protracted case, that at some point the judge will be able to schedule the hearing, make a determination of whether or not her concerns are in fact valid, and go ahead and set a sentence. And by the time the sentence has been set, she would have already served so much time within the prison system, at least more than a year, that she would be able to have that under consideration when the final sentence is being made. So that is one of the rights that is given to an individual in this system. I think she's properly exercised it.
Roosevelt, recently in the Virgin Islands legislature, we had officials from the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority, before the legislation, nonprofit organizations, contractors. The VI Envision program, for all intents and purposes, from a public perspective, has not been a success. The progress that we anticipated happening after the storms in 2017 just isn't there. There are literally Virgin Islanders still living with blue tarps, that when it rains, they have to either change them or have a portion of their house or their entire home leaking. Why do you think, other than what was presented before the legislation, has been holding this up? When you have a nonprofit organization that was juxtaposed against the officials from the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority, Love City Strong, saying, hey, we've literally rebuilt more homes than the government of the Virgin Islands. That's kind of paradoxical to us from a layman's point of view. Explain to us what you think is happening there.
Well, first of all, I tried to find out, living here for 56 years, I tried to find out exactly what's going on around me. And as I studied this, I was very unhappy because I have family members who suffered during the hurricane and couldn't get their homes rebuilt. Nonetheless, we had two programs. The STEP program, that was a failure. And one of the reasons I think it failed is that contractors were brought from the States. They didn't know where to find plywood, where to find nails and screws and what have you. And that created a big problem. And it was not the fault of the local government. Federal government had a lot to do with that, FEMA. And so that failed, but it has transitioned into the Envision program. And about a year and a half now, almost 40 homes have been built. And so I think that's significant improvement. You had
I think under testimony, they said it was 26 homes.
27 27
27
built,
homes,
but
yeah.
11 are under construction right
And
now.
400 in the design phase or some phase of the program, they're saying. But with the track record, I don't think a lot of people have a lot of confidence in hearing those kinds of numbers right now. I think in a situation like this, people want results.
Yeah,
and those results
that is
haven't
true. But
been
I'm
there.
saying to you, now that it has been retooled and local engineers have been hired, local contractors, you are seeing a movement going forward. 27 homes plus another 11 under construction. It tells you that there's movement, the Envision program. So I can't put all the blame on Envision. Most of the blame has to go to the STEP program, which was a failure. And so I think the combination of bringing local contractors, local engineers who understand the complete contour of the Virgin Island, the construction industry, that's why we're seeing movement now. But I understand that that is going to be moving Envision to another entity. So maybe we are going to see a hastening up of these projects.
Going to St. Croix, Senator Richards, Secretary Marcia Fudge, the HUD secretary, was in the territory last year and literally said that these funds are not going to be available forever. On the floor of the Senate, I heard the executive director of the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority, Dana Clendenin, say we're not currently at risk of losing any funds. But I don't anticipate that to be the case forever. And the secretary brought a message from the president saying, use it or lose it. And with a Republican-led House, that is entirely a possibility. What's your perspective on how the VI Envision program has been going?
I have to outrightly disagree with one of the statements that Senator David made, that the Envision program has been showing some success if they have a certain amount of homes, some 27 that they have and some other 40 that may be on the drawing board. And then the ending part of his statement was they're now transitioning into a new entity, a new name or whatever. I think what we need is someone in the Housing Finance Authority that knows how to, in fact, ensure that action can be taken. There's far too many people throughout this community. We are here in 2023, and the hurricanes that came through with Irma and Maria has been definitely in the past in regards to the problems that these people are experiencing. And more importantly, I think that we need to look at how best do we serve the community. You have contractors working under the VI Housing Finance Authority, and whether or not it would be more worthwhile to get some private control of a group of individuals to manage the construction or the rebuilding and the reconstruction of some of the homes in the territory. So there's actually two sides to the coin, but the underscoring point of my concern is that very little has been done for a very long time, and people are actually experiencing the consequences of it.
One of the things, Attorney Walker, that we heard on the floor of the legislature is that nonprofit organizations don't have the loopholes, which to a certain extent is correct. But we have Love City Strong on St. John, with a proven track record of rebuilding homes. What do you think is stopping, from a legal perspective, since we have an attorney, we're going to use your expertise, is stopping the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority from partnering with some of those organizations and perhaps redirecting some of the resources to an organization with a proven track record to get things done?
I mean, ultimately, they're subjected to these federal guidelines, and they're subjected to rules that apply to the receiving of those funds. I don't believe it's just as easy as delegating that authority to a private company or a nonprofit that may not have the controls in place that the government has. Unfortunately, some of those controls, are bureaucratic and result in delay, but it's not as simple as just handing over funds to a nonprofit. That's not something they can do, specifically when you're talking about the HUD funds, because we have to remember that there's a GAR appointed, there's an executive order, there's an authority that's been delegated to the VIHFA. And based on what I understand and know, that authority is not something that can then be delegated outside of the structure of the government. So I don't think it's as simple as, the nonprofit may make it sound. And I agreed with Interim Executive Director Clendenin that it's not a fair comparison. But I do think there's some room for government and private sector to work together more closely. And I agree with former Senator David. I do think we're going to see improvement and increased numbers under the program.
Okay, can I quickly add to? I think the comparison that Ms. Commission is making, and we probably need to clarify that for the record when she makes reference to the group Love Cities St. John that's doing the work on the homes over there. It is my understanding they are not receiving federal funds for the work that they're doing over there that are under the same constraints of the money that are under the Housing Finance Authority. And I think we need to at least see if we could clarify that particular point.
And I'm glad you took the opportunity to do so, because I was going to clarify it, because I was at the meeting with the HUD secretary where she instructed the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority to partner with them, and that those partnerships were available. So my implication wasn't just to give them the money to make the construction happen, but to utilize the processes and partner with them to get things done, because they have managed to not only streamline the process, but to be able to rebuild at rates per square foot cheaper than construction costs with contractors. But we're going to move on because
I'd like to make a comment
real quickly
with respect to the grant that was given to Housing Finance Authority. I don't think it's at risk because we have up until 2026 to spend this money. In addition to that, the Housing Finance Authority has the ability to go forward to ask for an extension, even though the money is not risk right now, to make sure when 2026 comes that they have an extension and the money would still be available.
Real quickly, we saw the clip earlier with our delegate, Stacey Plaskett, and the new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. And that was quite an interesting interaction that both of them had earlier this year. I understand from the delegate that after that interaction, apologies were made and, they smoothed things over. But with the new House Speaker, what do you think the ramifications for the Virgin Islands are?
Well, whether that incident happened or not, I don't have a whole lot of confidence in the new Speaker. He's one of those people who wrote letters wanting the election to be overturned and Trump become president. How could you think this way? And then you could be bipartisan. That's not going to happen. So I see him holding a hard line going down the road. And it is my hope that, in fact, there were some making up that had taken place. But some point in time, they're going to need the Democrats. And the Democrats are going to have to play a hard line. And so the Speaker would have to give in at times.
Senate President Richards, the same rule that was in place to help remove Kevin McCarthy is still in place for Mike Johnson. Do you think he sticks around?
Well, I don't know whether or not Mike Johnson sticks around or not. I am more concerned with the initial point you raised with Senator David about what effect would it have on the Virgin Islands as a territory with the new leadership. I think the most important concern that I would have is the ability of not only the delegate to Congress, but the authorities that represent the government of the Virgin Islands on the mainland, in the capital, in Washington, D.C., being able to work some of the concerns through the legislative process from the House to the Senate. And one of the big issues I believe that the delegate spoke about and touched on was the rum cover over revenues. How would that impact the concern that we have looking forward to trying to get it raised in comparison to the standard limit that has been set for years?
Well, it's interesting that you bring up the rum cover over, because we had the delegate on the show a few weeks ago who mentioned that for us to get that passed, a tax bill basically has to be passed by the House of Representatives and the Senate. And when the next tax bill goes forward, those provisions should be there to extend our $13.50 rate from what it is now. But we only have a few more minutes left. And recently the community suffered a great loss with the death of Daryl George. He was close to me. I know, Roosevelt, you have a few words that you could definitely talk about. A fierce advocate for the community and somebody who was the embodiment of his role that he played. Let's talk about Daryl George for a moment.
As a matter of fact, Daryl George was on radio with me just 2 weeks before he died. And he exercised that commitment that he has had to serve the people of the Virgin Islands. And it didn't matter where he was, whether he was a volunteer, whether he was a firefighter, no matter what, whether it was politics, he gave it his all. And this community is going to miss him because he was dedicated, he was committed, and you didn't want a better, a stronger fighter or soldier for the people of the Virgin Islands than Darrell Mousy George.
Attorney Walker, any remembrances of Mr. George?
Definitely. I did not know him as long, of course, as Senator David did, but the transition team, or the portion of the transition team that was led by myself and Maurice James, Mousy served on it. So I spent a good deal of time with him, and I was involved in several meetings with him, and I can say this: he was very loyal and committed to the Virgin Islands. He gave countless hours, he worked hard, and he was very passionate. He was passionate about fire, he was passionate about EMS. He was definitely instrumental in the merger of the two. And for someone to just dedicate all of that time, all of that energy, all of that passion, uncompensated, because all of this was leading up to him becoming the director, I just found him to be one of the most committed people that I had ever encountered. And I was very sad, and I still am very sad about the loss of Mousy.
Real quickly, Senate President Richards, we have about 30 seconds. If you could just share a few words.
I could quickly speak on Director George, and I heard the earlier portion of the program when Senator Dowe was speaking to the fact that he was the one that was responsible for introducing the legislation to bring about a merger between the Port Authority and WICO. And so similarly, more than a decade and a half ago, I had the legislation to merge the emergency medical services with the fire department, and the person that was standing next to me and pushing that, he wasn't even the director then, he was in his position of assistant director, and he couldn't believe that the individuals in the community, and particularly our legislators, couldn't understand the importance of providing emergency services in an expedited manner through the fire department. And so I was glad to see that come to pass. I was glad to see that he was successful and continued to push that type of services for a community, and as a committed person, not only to fire and EMS, but more importantly to the junior members that work with the fire department, that he be able to bring along as young individuals, young men and women that go up to be contributors to this community. So I am particularly pleased with his accomplishments and also saddened of his passing.
Well, thank you for that. And he certainly left a legacy that will be hard to fill. Those were some big shoes. Although they called him Mousy, in no way that was an indicator of who he was. That's all that we have for the show today. Be sure to tune in next Sunday at 1 p.m. for an all-new episode of Comes with the Territory. For your news updates, tune into WTJX's newsfeed every weekday at 5 p.m. on 93.1 FM or by downloading the WTJX app. I'm Leslie Comisian. For all of us here at WTJX, have a great Sunday.